most people, we have no financial literacy. We're put in the system where we're set up to fail. No financial institution is incentivized for an average consumer to have any sort of financial literacy. They're incentivized for you to be bad with money. Like, they want to take advantage of you. That's how they win.
Haley Sachs, Mrs. Dow Jones, welcome to The Long-Term Investor.
I can't wait to be here. Thank you, Peter.
Well, Future Rich Person, your new book is phenomenal. But before we dive into some of the content that came out of that, I was just hoping quick background for those who don't know of you and your work. Like, tell us about yourself. Tell us what you're all about.
Absolutely. So I am credited as being sort of like the first financial influencer. I've been doing this for 10 years. And when I started like being online and posting videos about money, not really a thing. But I started my career in comedy. So everyone's always like, oh, you never worked on Wall Street? Well, my first job was for David Letterman. And then my sort of aha money moment came because I got hired by Lorne Michaels, who started SNL. And that was my first full-time job, because I don't know if anyone listening is familiar with the entertainment industry, specifically comedy, but it is very much like gig worker oriented. So it was very cool to get that full-time gig with Lorne.
I mean, Lorne and Letterman, those are pretty big names.
Very big names. I was definitely locked in with comedy. But, you know, something that I talk about a lot in the book is like this idea that the American dream is sort of dead, and like can't really look to corporate structures anymore in the same way to have financial success. You know, like it used to be for our parents' generations, you were at the same job for 30 years, you just put money in your 401k, you were safe, you know, you could retire. But now we have to be so much more creative and really have our own backs. And so, you know, in a way that I didn't really notice then, I, you know, ended up, my aha money moment was, okay, sorry, I got hired at Lorne Michaels the first day on the job. It was my first full-time job too. They asked me about health insurance and 401ks. And, you know, I didn't even know how to read a paycheck. I thought a 401k was a road race. It was very bleak. I had no financial literacy. And you know, I went home and tried to learn because I was so excited about this job. I didn't want them to fire me. And all the information that I found was either like so pandering towards women, like really telling us about deprivation, rewash your paper towels, don't have avocado toast, no lattes, or it was investing advice that really felt like it was for men. And it was, you know, sort of for guys who look like guys that look like they'd never been through puberty, basically using a lot of jargon to like explain things to me in a way that just seemed like overly complicated. And so when I just sort of started to do the research myself, I was like, wow, this is not that hard. Like, I've completely been catfished. I have been, you know, telling myself for my whole life that money's not for me, that I basically need to like, my dad will do it for me, or I'll marry someone who's going to do it. And like, this is like so complicated. And, you know, by being good with money, my life's going to get so much smaller and it's going to get worse. And what I realized was, being in control of my finances gave me so much freedom, so much ability to basically do whatever the hell I want, which I do, which is freaking awesome. And also that you basically just need like 7th grade math and some automation and you could be rich too. So that's sort of where Mrs. Dow Jones was born. But then back to the whole part of, you know, the American dream is dead, you know, can't trust corporate. I got laid off from Lorne Michaels. So I was working there for 6 months and was sort of like building this idea out. And then I was like, okay, cool. I can either like go grovel for a job at Comedy Central, which, you know, media's dying. I'm going to be making like $50,000 a year. Like it's, you know, I'm going to have to, you know, work so much. It's going to be, I'm not going to own anything that I do, or I can really try and make this a thing. And so I gave myself a year to pursue this. And in the meantime, I was working as like a freelance music writer for a company called Fuse. I'm not really that into music. So it's funny because I was like writing all the videos for, you know, I think it was like Phineas would come, or, you know, Sophie Tucker, like all these cool bands that I had no idea about because I'm really just a Swiftie. And then by the end of that, I got in the New York Times. And so, which sort of changed my career. And then shortly after that was the pandemic, which was obviously like a big boom for financial content as well. And yeah, I've been doing it ever since. And this is my first book though. So it's really been like a long lead up to this and I'm really excited.
Well, it turned out great. And I really appreciate like how approachable that you're making some of this stuff. And I thought what was interesting is you opened the book with people who are kind of ashamed or overwhelmed or just avoiding their money. So maybe let's start there. Why is shame such a powerful barrier to building wealth?
You know, Peter, like the whole first part of the book is called Face It, because I've done this for almost 10 years. I've worked with tens of thousands of people. And what I've noticed is that, I can give you all the money advice in the world, but you're never actually going to change your finances if you don't first change your money mindset. And you first don't understand why you act the way that you act. And so, shame is so powerful because neurologically, it activates the same threat response as like physical danger. When you feel financial shame, you go offline, like you're no longer there. And, we had so much financial shame, despite the fact that no one ever taught us. There's a reason that with generational wealth, 90% of it is gone by the second generation. And by the third generation, 70% of it is gone. And it's because anyone can inherit money, but no one can inherit financial literacy. So every person that you see who's rich or who's doing well with their money is someone who learned, who took the time to learn. So, when people talk about shame being this powerful barrier to building wealth, I love to always take the other side, which is like, okay, yeah, you might feel ashamed, but what are you ashamed of? Because you were never taught this. It's not taught in schools. I guarantee your teachers never taught you this. And you not knowing anything actually puts you in the same boat as like Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, Rihanna, like Michael Bloomberg, whoever you look up to in the financial space, like Jay-Z, whatever, all these people who made a lot of money and are keeping it and growing wealth started at the same place as you. And the only difference between you and them is that they have the audacity to try and become a future rich person. So it's really about just taking that risk and getting out of your own freaking way.
Now, everybody, when we're talking about trying to be a future rich person, everybody's always talking about investing in the stock market. And hey, like the show's called The Long-Term Investor. I've written a book on that too. Like investing in the stock market's important, but you highlight how maybe the better investment is in yourself, like your skills, your confidence, your earning potential. Why do you feel like people should be starting there?
It's not that it's a better investment necessarily, but like a huge part of my book is about making more money. And I think that especially, like I said, for women, not to be a broken record, we're told all about this shame but there's a floor to how much you can cut, but there's no ceiling to how much you can earn. So, we're never taught negotiation. And most of us are also like not taking into our own hands our ability to make ourselves more valuable. Like we sort of passively, it's this American dream that we're sold, right? That like, if you just stay on this path, you don't really have to do anything. As long as you just follow it, you're going to get where you want to be. And that's actually not true anymore. You have to be much more aggressive and much more creative. And so what that means in practicality is like, building your skill set, making sure that you are keeping track of your wins at work. So when you negotiate, you have a full track record of that. There's so many ways to improve your ability to make more money. And like that is going to have a much bigger impact on your long-term financial health than anything else, as long as you don't spend it all. If you can make more money, not spend it all, and put it to work in the stock market, you need both. You need to make more money and then also use it to grow wealth. Then you will reach financial freedom. You'll be a future rich person.
I like that you mentioned the wins part now. I think you called it a wins folder in the book where you like kind of compile a wins folder. And Haley, I did that the first, 5 or 6 years of my career where every quarter on a piece of paper, I would write down the things I did and I would show it to the person I was reporting to, because I think what people forget is nobody's thinking about you. Everybody's kind of thinking of themselves. It's just a little bit of human nature. And so it's like one thing to celebrate and it's another way to like document, hey, I'm adding value. And it sort of lets you, if you don't follow, I had somewhat of a nonlinear career path. I would argue you did too. Sometimes those wins are what like shows you the path, but you also say like, hey, if you don't spend it all, that's the other way to wealth. I mean, you definitely talked about that in the book. Tell me what like better spending looks like in your opinion.
So first of all, like I love money. I love spending money. Like
Me too.
Yeah, like I agree. We could spend some together sometime. But like, I'm not that financial expert who comes at things from a place of deprivation. Cause I know just from my own life, I think something that held me back so much from taking control of my finances was this idea that it was really going to suck to be good with money. That like, oh, if I, sort of like going on a diet or starting a workout plan or something where you're like, oh, I know I should do that, but it's going to be so hard. I don't want to, it sounds brutal, And so not about deprivation. I love money. I don't think that so much of financial advice makes you feel like to be good with building, growing wealth and like reaching financial freedom, becoming a future rich person, you have to like absolutely cut everything out. And, I have a future rich person spending plan in the book, which really has balance. Like I really believe sort of, similar to a diet where it's like, you can't be so extreme or you're going to go off the rails. And so I talk a lot about the 50-30-20 budgeting rule just as a template. So 50% of your after-tax income towards needs, 30% towards wants, 20% to future you. And that's your action money. But that 30% towards wants is so important. So you could use that in any way that fits you. That could be, maybe you're someone who wants to go on like one big trip a year, put it towards that. Maybe you're someone who wants to go on like a few smaller trips. Maybe you're someone who like loves to go to theater. Maybe you're someone who like loves to buy vintage jewelry, or you want, whatever your thing is that really gets you going. But, something that I talk a lot about in the book too is having a money date, which is a set time every month where you look through your finances, which I mean, most people don't do, which is crazy because what you don't measure will never grow. It's so important to keep an eye on your bottom line. But one of the things that I love the most about a money date is that you can look through your spending and ask yourself, like, how did I feel with this purchase? Was it worth it? Did I buy that just because I was stressed or anxious or because an influencer told me to? Or was that because like that is 100% aligned with my financial values? And it's something that I freaking love and gives me so much like oomph for. And so it's a good moment for you to sort of figure out, what do you actually value?
Yeah, people will talk about their values all the time. I'm like, but show me your spending and I'll tell you what your values actually are.
That's such a good point. And for me, it's like,
and I love the exercise.
Yeah, that exercise is great.
There's times where I've like, when earlier in my career, I spent more time like trying to help people just find more money to save. And say like, hey, you and a significant other, print off the same credit card statement and put like high value, medium, and low. And like, if you both have low on something, cut it. It's not about like criticizing one person's low or one person's high, but like anything, like you said, that awareness, whatever exercise that has you kind of looking at your expenses, your savings, your cash flows. I think that's wildly, it's just like stepping on the scale every morning. I'm not saying stepping on the scale every morning is going to prevent you from making poor eating choices in the day. I make poor eating choices every day, despite stepping on this scale. But, I'm sidetracking a little. One other thing you were kind of mentioning with the spending is you talked about like saving for goals and like the things that you want to spend on and like what to treat. I mean, how do you feel like somebody should be thinking about short-term goals versus maybe long-term investing or even just long-term goals?
I think it's really important to do both, but it's like they both come from different budgets, right? Like if we talk about the 50-30-20 rule, 50% towards needs, 30% towards wants, 20% to future you. So I would say that like if it is a want, like a vacation or something like that, then it should come from that 30%. Versus if it is like a long-term goal that's actually asset building, like, okay, I want to max out my Roth IRA or something like that, it comes from the 20%. So, but it's, everything is a balance. You can't have everything, but you can have anything. So but I do think that having financial goals is really motivating, and that it is something, when you know your why, it makes it really easy to know why not.
Great point. And you mentioned in the book about how you really shouldn't be like saving for the future or investing for long term until you have something set aside. Now, Haley, I wrote a book called Making Money Simple several years ago and talked about emergency funds just as you do. But I, for a few years, have felt like emergency funds need a rebrand. And you sort of do that because you call it like an exit plan, you call it FU money, you call it a fire extinguisher. I'm just like boring. I'm like, oh, it's an excess cash or a cash reserve. I'm thinking, but the thing is, you tap an emergency fund sometimes for things that aren't emergencies, right? I mean, there's just such a wide opportunity set for that money beyond just, here's an unexpected expense.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I do think it's an emergency if you are like in a job that you're totally dying at and like you have like an abusive boss or whatever, or like
Fair
you're in
enough.
a
Okay.
relationship that you need to leave. Like, especially for women, I think an emergency fund is just so important because it gives us the opportunity to get ourselves out of situations. An emergency, I guess what you're saying, traditionally, oh, car accident, like
Right.
a dental thing or whatever, it is. I think emergencies can be emotional too. Of course, there's a sliding scale here. It doesn't mean like you have a bad day at work and you're like, emergency fund, I gotta quit. But it's like, you sort of know if you're in one of those situations where you're totally stuck and your soul is dying a little. And to me, that is an emergency. And that's what money is all about. Being a future rich person is about having control over your life.
Yeah, that flexibility. I like that you're clarifying my thought pattern there because the traditional, as you point out, emergency for like unexpected medical expense, car crash, those are real things. But I think it's just the flexibility that cash offers you is underrated, especially when people, and this is not as true now as it was maybe 10 years ago, but sometimes people look at their cash and it's not earning that much and they say, gosh, I should be investing this money. I mean, what do you say to people like that who are resistant to build up any sort of cash reserve because they want to invest it?
I mean, my chapter in the book on investing has like a warning label on it that says like, warning, do not invest unless you have an emergency fund and have paid off your high interest rate debt. And that's because of math. Like I'm very data driven. And like if you skip go and you go right to investing and you have no emergency fund, then you might get into an emergency and have to pull your money out of the stock market when the market is down. And look, we are long-term investors, Peter. Obviously, we're on this show, but we know the stock market does not always go up. It goes down and up and down and up and then eventually up over time. But if you need your money in that time where it is down, you might have to take it at a loss, not to mention all the tax implications. You're breaking up a compounding cycle. So it really has a huge impact. You have to do things logically. Same thing with investing if you have high interest rate debt. I mean, debt is credit card debt could be 27%, but the stock market makes 8 to 10%. So you're on a hedonic treadmill if you're investing, but you have a high interest rate debt that you're paying off.
Well, and I think some people think that they forget the important point that you just made, that the stock market, your expectation should be like 8 to 10%, whereas they're thinking, I'll just get into this IPO and make a lot of money and, off to the races. I do feel like, there's a lot of people who look at their investments and don't really understand what risk is or don't understand the risks they're taking. And when you think about people who are engaging with your work, I mean, what's the kind of misconception or common mistake that you see people making on the investment side, I should say?
I think that there is just this idea of getting rich quick that is quite dangerous. And it comes from financial nihilism, like this idea that like the system is so out to get you. There's no more opportunity. Like the world is burning. We're on a floating rock. So we might as well just like fully send it and not take the boring way because like we've already been so screwed by the system. So we need to like find a different route. And I will say that there's still so much opportunity to grow wealth. And those are the people who actually lose. But that's something that I see the most is just this, inclination to get rich quick. I think I also see a lot of people who are scared to invest because they think that it's risky. So they would rather keep their money in a checking account or a savings account, even if they have more than enough. They've oversaved their emergency fund. They don't have debt. They want to oversave from that because they're like convinced that by putting money in the market, they're putting themselves at risk. But the inflation report just came out. Inflation is at 3-year highs. You cannot outrun inflation. Like if you keep your money in cash, then you are just losing purchasing power every single day. So actually that's more dangerous than investing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Like the long-term investing is actually like the safe option. Like that's you being like a boring grandma.
I love it. Well, and I think, everyone thinks about the volatility piece and, you sort of point out at times, and maybe not in these exact words, but like, you should expect the drama to come, right? Like when you get invested, the reason we invest is to grow our savings at a rate greater than inflation, ideally without taking undue risk. And to me, like what's undue risk? I typically think it's in investing in individual stocks. It's trying to get in and out at the right moment. But something like a 10% drop or a 20% drop or even a 30+% drop, like those are actually kind of normal. So, I mean, when you are talking to followers, when you're talking to others, like how do you feel like you can set expectations on that front to say like, yes, it's risky to not be investing, but what are those things you should be expecting as you are an investor?
I always say, like, I do not want an average wardrobe. I don't want an average relationship. I don't want average travels or friends. But like, when it comes to investing, give me average. Like, I want to be average. Like, that's what we need to pursue. Like, be fabulous and over excel in every other part of your life. But like, you are going to make yourself go broke if you look for opportunities to be not average investing. Like, that's really my name of the game is like, I pursue an 8 to 10%. Like maybe I miss out on opportunities. A lot of things come across my desk, investments, but I'm never looking to get rich quick. And I'm never looking for things that overpromise, because most things that overpromise underdeliver. Look at the SpaceX IPO. You think anyone's getting rich off that? These retail investors are screwed.
No, every big institutional investor I know with access to the SpaceX IPO is just talking about how they can get rid of it. And it's like, why would you want something? Why are you so desperate to buy something at the price that the smart money is desperately trying to sell it at and liquidate from? But it kind of comes, you talk about in like your spending part about like looking rich versus like being rich. And sometimes I think that applies to like the portfolio too.
Totally. Like I was just in Florida and I saw this guy walking like the boardwalk. I was in Marco Island with a SpaceX IPO shirt. Like it's like people like stolen valor.
Nice.
They want to be part of this moment. And look, SpaceX is an amazing company, but I'm just all about data. Like the actual Morningstar like valuation of the company is like 40 to 50% lower than what it's being marked as. So I wouldn't go to a store and buy something for 50% more than it is worth. You know what I mean? That's insane. I'm always looking for a good deal. I like a sale. I like to haggle. So yeah, I think looking rich instead of being rich is part of the financial nihilism though, where, really rich people, they're wearing ergonomic shoes. They're like, in UPF clothing. They have a few things that they're wearing every day. Like they're not concerned with what they look like. They don't need to peacock. And it's usually the ones who spend the most time. Like I was just talking to my friend and who is really broke. She's now like a very successful podcaster. Her name is Jackie Schimmel. And when she started, was so broke. And she was like, I never spent more time trying to look rich than when I had nothing. And I feel like that sums it up.
I mean, that's the world we live in. Some of it being social media, some of it just being human nature.
Human nature, totally. But I mean, there's just an article in the New York Times about these influencers who teach you how to look rich. And they have hundreds of thousands of followers and they tell you to like, wear beige clothes and like, good tailoring and all that bullshit. And it's like, I don't know. It's your energy is so much better spent learning to invest and focusing on spending less but better and learning how to increase your skills so you can make more money. Like it sounds so boring, but that's really how you're actually going to improve your financial life. And, in this age of social media, it's very hard, Peter. Like we are advertised to 5,000 times a day. Our parents were advertised to 500 times a day. I mean, 20% of what you see online is an advertisement on social media. So all day, you're being told what you should buy, not to mention the cookies in your browser. Like if I look at a dress once, the dress is following me around the internet. And by the way, I'm not even good at avoiding it. Like I am of returns. I like still buy like it. I fall for it. I just send everything back. That's not right. Like it's like this constant burden really, because it's always like, this hustle of labels and this package and whatever. Like it's annoying, but it's sort of just like a hard thing about being human now and being online. But that's like you have to really clear your cookies. Like I talk a lot about finance. No, but like, you have to add friction back into your finances. Like unsubscribe to that newsletter, remove Apple Pay because you're going to use it like Apple be paying. Like unfollow influencers. I unfollow so many influencers. Like God bless.
Just don't unfollow Haley. Everybody,
I never
just
tell you to like buy. Like even when people ask me to like link my outfit or whatever, I never do that. Like it's like because also it's relative. What I spend is relative to what I make. So you shouldn't be comparing yourself to me because you don't know my full financial picture, which also drives me crazy on social media. Like I have a series on Instagram where I compare like someone rich's purchase, like how much it meant to them versus to you. So like Harry Styles just proposed to his girlfriend, Zoe Kravitz, with a $1 million engagement ring. But relative to his net worth, it is the same cost as someone with a $56,000 income, which is the average for America, spending $5,000 on an engagement ring, which is also the average for an American engagement ring. And so you might see the $1 million engagement ring and be pissed that like you don't have that big or nice of an engagement ring, but it's like, it's all relative to what you make. That's why you can't compare yourself to other people.
I love that example. And, you've written that like getting rich and staying rich are different skill sets.
Totally.
I mean, what do you think changes once someone has some momentum?
I think wealth preservation is something that we need to talk about a lot more. And it is, it's really hard to get yourself even to the place where you can think about that, right? Like most people, we have no financial literacy. We're put in the system where we're set up to fail. Like no financial institution is incentivized for an average consumer to have any sort of financial literacy. They're incentivized for you to be bad with money. Like they want to take advantage of you. That's how they win. So, okay, first of all, hard to even get to the place where you're thinking about staying rich, right? Like you have to really avoid so much stuff, get your impulses in control, get your money mindset in control, because, it's not even that it's hard to do. It's more just like, what's your self-identity? Like my self-identity when I started was, it's like, I can't do this. Money's so hard. My life's going to suck, all these things. But then I just realized, wow, if I get it in control and then I focus on making more money, life's actually really fun. And so I think that staying rich is really about like tax optimization, which like if you have your own business, that's a whole game. But like even on a smaller scale, if you're a worker who's on a salary, that means like being really diligent about maxing out your tax advantage accounts, using your health savings account as an investment account instead of using it on like health products, like wherever you can to deduct things, because, Uncle Sam sucks. He's all of our uncle. He's the worst. But, it also has a lot to do with avoiding lifestyle creep. Like there was just this study from Goldman Sachs about, people who make $300,000 to $400,000 a year are more likely to be living paycheck to paycheck than people who make under $100,000 a year. And so, what that says to me is that people they're making more money, but they're increasing their spending. And so there's no delta left over, which I call in the book action money. And without that action money, it doesn't matter how much you make. If you don't have something that you're keeping that you can put to work, you're never going to progress in your financial life. And then I think also like with aging parents, that's really hard because a lot of us have to like take care of our parents. There's a financial burden. So, wealth preservation is also about learning how to set boundaries, even when they're really emotional and hard, and learning to put your own oxygen mask on first because, you can help everyone else before you, but that's not actually going to put you in a position where you're going to succeed.
Yeah, I feel like I see that, by the way, all the time where you have adults who are taking care of kids as well as their parents, but even if like adults just taking care of their parents and they think of it as more like, well, no, I'm just being a good son or a good daughter. They don't even think of themselves as a caregiver, but they are in fact doing what a caregiver does. And it, certainly can tie over to a lot of things. It used to be, 10 or 20 years ago, all we were talking about in the financial profession was like the wealth transfer, the wealth transfer, the wealth transfer. Well, the baby boomer generation is still alive and still like spending money and they're going to live longer than ever. And I think this idea of like generational wealth for some families, I think people have this picture, like this TV show movie, like image of what generational wealth even is. But like for normal families that, a lot of people actually have generational wealth. It's just the people who had a plan and were consistent and intentional with their choices. I mean, you talk a little bit about generational and wealth. Like where are you at on that?
Well, so I grew up with generational wealth and, I have a dad who's a private wealth manager. And so he was really diligent about planning. And I grew up on the Upper East Side, which is like, a very like, there's a lot of rich families, but I feel like we never lived that life to the same degree or anything because he was always planning, and that's sort of how I feel now when I look at my generational wealth, that you want to give your kids enough that they can do anything, but not enough that they don't have to do anything. And that's like the famous Warren Buffett quote that I really believe in. But I also think that it's like, with compound interest, investing a relatively small conservative amount for a child over time adds up so significantly that if there's any way to swing that, it really is something that I think is worth doing, because it's like, it's almost too easy, right? Like, it's like having 50, if you're not going to touch that money till you're 50 or 60, like you could put in $130,000 and have like 13 million or 16 million by the time you're in your 60s, which is like, that's so crazy. And so, yeah, I really appreciate that. But I also think that it's like, I have a lot of grit and determination, and it's not like I could stop working or would want to. But I think that the lesson that I really learned from that is just like, you have to be focused on your own path. Like, it wasn't ever keeping up with the Joneses. It was like thinking long term about this financial plan and what we wanted, what he wanted to do for his family, what him and my mom wanted to do, and then following that instead,
I love hearing the background. And Haley, we've covered a ton of ground here. I mean, if people are still listening and they're starting to feel overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, like, how do I become a future rich person? Like, give me like a couple actions somebody could take this week or this month to like get on the right path and get to a place where they're going to have some confidence in their money situation?
Well, first of all, I will say that financial confidence follows financial action. So even if you right now are not confident, that's fine. Take financial action, and I guarantee you will change your tune. You'll start to see yourself more as a future rich person. Like, it is about changing your belief and like building evidence and a case for yourself as someone who is taking control of your money. And that just starts with like one small step. So, I think really important to sort of brainwash yourself with inspirational financial content. Like, whether it's listening to this podcast, my book's on audiobook, like, if you have 4 broke friends, you're about to be the 5th. But it doesn't mean that you need to then rethink your whole friend group if your friend group is not like so financially focused. Those might be people that you really love, but just maybe not aligned with. You can have friends who are creators who are going to stick in your head and tell you what to do. And I think that's like such a cool thing about being alive now, that we have all this access. But then I also just say a really actionable thing to do is open a high yield savings account. Completely free to open. Regular savings account gets 0.04% interest. A high yield will give you 4 to 5%. So it's a huge jump. That's an 100 times jump. And, set up an automated deposit. That was where I started my financial journey, was literally just by saving my emergency fund, automating that deposit. And like, it was so addictive. And now I'm like so addicted to having my saving buckets. I take a trip to Europe every summer. That is something that I automate my savings for. I have one for my dog. I have one for my next apartment. Like, it's like I have all of these little like dreams of mine as a future rich person of what I want my life to look like. And I've got that money just going away every month towards that. So it's also fun. Like, it doesn't have to be something that's so shame-filled. It's like you have the paintbrush to your life. Like, this is your canvas. Money is the thing that allows you to do that. And I know that's hard to feel when you are, struggling, you're living paycheck to paycheck. But I will say the first step there is really to think about, how can you make yourself into someone who makes more money? And there's so many ways to do that. Like, right now, it's never been easier to gain skills. That doesn't mean like going down the rabbit hole of all these like charlatans on TikTok trying to teach you how to like do this or that. But it's like, learn about AI, like take a course on AI, be the person in your office who's really good at it. And like, I guarantee you that's going to give you value. Or like, just there's so many ways to get better at what you do, and just look for those opportunities to make more money. And then don't spend it all. That's the biggest thing. Do not spend it all.
Spend it on your future self, i.e. like invest some of it. That, investing is spending on yourself. It's just, delayed spending.
And then also just like whenever you see a commercial or an influencer or someone trying to sell you something, just tell yourself like, oh, they're trying to take my money. Like,
I love it.
Take a beat, it's so easy to be impulsive. The world is so crazy. We see so much more news than we really should. And like, it's easy to just like try to regulate through buying things. It doesn't work. I try every day, and then that's why I have to return everything.
I got a bag of returns right over there. Yeah. Maybe it'll happen after this conversation, but before I sign off.
That's our best financial advice. Buy a printer.
Yes. Haley, where can people find you if they want to follow you more closely on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I would love to have you. Everyone is welcome. Mrs. Dow Jones. That's like Mrs. like married to the Dow. You could also go to mrsdowjones.com. You can get my book, Future Rich Person, wherever you get books. And yeah, my podcast, Financial Tea, is out every Thursday.
Be sure to get all that stuff. And if you are wanting to get resources that we mentioned during the episode, you can go to thelongterminvestor.com. But Haley, thank you so much for being here today. Can't wait to do it again sometime.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you for having me, Peter. Stay rich.